Hello and welcome to another lap guide for the iRacing Camel GT series. This week we are at Monza. Here's the lap first. All right, so lap time there is a 135.199. This week we have morning weather. So running track temps about a midpoint there, hopefully. And let's see, let's go ahead and jump back to the start of the lap. All right, so let's go ahead and move up to turn one and go through this turn by turn in more detail. Turn the game audio down a bit. All right, so coming up down into turn one, the first chicane, Retafilio. You want to brake between the 150 and the 100, probably a little closer to the 100. If you brake at the 100, that's going to be a bit too late. So you'll see threshold braking is going to happen about 80% just before that point. And then, of course, trailing off from there, keeping wide, get a nice wide turn in for the first part of the chicane here. Now, as you turn in, you want to aim to use all of the curbing initially to help get a better angle on the exit of the corner on the second part of the chicane so that you can get back to throttle as soon as you reach that. You want to use the curbing, a bit of the curbing. I was actually using a little more of this curbing initially when I was first running some laps, but I found the margin for error was pretty difficult there, very unforgiving if you get up onto the taller curbing here, which will bounce the car around quite a bit. And so I found myself just being a little bit more cautious on that to make sure that I could get to throttle sooner. I think the car tends to slide a little bit on this curbing too as well. I'm not sure on that. It does seem to take a little bit of a bit of unsettling as it comes down off of this curbing. You'll notice that played back at speed. Let's go ahead and do that so you can see just a little bit of unsettling there. So getting back to throttle off of the chicane is pretty difficult here. You're going to see just a little bit of a slide as throttle gets up to about 60 or 70%, and there's going to be a quick adjustment of the wheel. So you can see about the point where the car can start to lose traction there. This is down into first gear as well, so getting off this corner quickly is pretty difficult, but very important to get that timed right. So let's play this through here at speed. All right, so coming down around Curva Grande, I'll full throttle here down into the second chicane. Braking point for the second chicane is, again, maybe just before the 100, but I think I threshold right at. This particular instance, I locked up briefly, went a little heavy on braking. You'll hear a brief lock up there, but that was very, very brief. And I would definitely aim to hit again about 80% or so throttle here. I'm sorry, 80% or so brake. And then, of course, start to trail off of that pretty quickly. Keeping the car to the right, being patient on turn in. You want to use a lot of the curbing initially in the chicane here, and maybe a little less in the second corner of the chicane. I definitely try to avoid getting up again onto the taller orange curbing there, but you can use a little less curbing on the second part of the chicane here than I did here. As you come across the exit, while you can come as wide as I did here, you're going to see a pretty significant bounce there. So be careful of that. I usually try to only come up into the colored curbing, the red and green rumble strip section of the curbing here. I don't usually go quite that wide, but you can see a pretty significant bump there that the car takes, but was able to maintain full throttle still. So let's play that through. All right, so in the Lesmo curve, two parts. The first part of the curve, Lesmo 1, you want to take a late apex. So being real patient here, keeping the car to the right, and trying to make sure you apex a little bit on the latter part of the corner. Maybe roughly where the little access road here is about where you want to apex. And then as you run wide, use all of the curbing to come up over into the green surface here. You can even drop a tire a little bit into the gravel there without an off track, but just assume that's part of the road and use all of it. And make sure that you can get back to throttle, full throttle, before you get to the curbing here to the left. So there's the full throttle point there actually. So let's go ahead and play that part through. So I keep it in third gear through Lesmo 1 and Lesmo 2 here. And the way that I have the car set up, I think that feels pretty comfortable, although it feels like you could get to a point, if you hit Lesmo 1 perfectly, where you may want to shift up into fourth, but I think if you just run it up over 7,000 RPMs, as I do here, it's fine. I just like to keep it in third and not shift up. Braking for the second part of Lesmo 2, is going to be right around the 50. I think the threshold is maybe just past that. We've got about 60% or so braking just past that. And you can attack this corner a little more aggressively. You can turn in kind of an average apex point into the red and white section of the curbing. And again, let the car run all the way wide. Use this as all of this as part of the road. Again, touching the gravel a little bit. Now you do want to be careful about running any wider than I do here. You can actually use a good portion of the road here without an off track, but there's a pretty significant bump in the road there that can cause you to lift to avoid losing control. So you really want to try to get back to the racing surface by about the time you see the red and white curbing end. So that's about the latest I would get back over there. I'm not sure exactly where it is, but I know if you run a little wider, a little longer than that, it gets pretty rough. So let's play that through. All right, so coming down now into Ascari. The braking point is about the 100. So let's jump back to that. So threshold brake, 80%, right at about that or maybe just past that. I shift down into second here. You could keep it in third. Through most of my practicing, I was shifting down into second, and as I found I could carry a little more speed here, I felt like maybe third gear would work fine too, but I was so used to kind of the timing and the feel of getting down into second and shifting back up, and the RPMs of where the engine is at, as it just became more natural for me, so I just use second here. And the goal here is to use all of the curbing here on the left without touching the taller sections of curbing, obviously, which will unsettle the car quite a bit. So using all of the curbing here to the left, and you really want to get back to full throttle right at about the turn 9 portion of Ascari here. So just as you cross the 3 bumps here to the right, you want to be getting back to full throttle right afterwards. So as you kind of set up your line through Ascari, do that with the intention of getting back to throttle right at about this point here and full throttle. So there's a quick upshift into third right before that point, and then to full throttle right away. And of course you want to get as close to, again, these bumps without touching them, and even kind of come over into the right here if you need to open up the exit of the corner and keep it full throttle. Again, getting to the left here without touching the bump, and use all of the green surface again. You can even go a little wider than this, up into the grass a little bit without an off track, but this is the line that I typically take right through here. So let's play through this chicane. All right, so coming down now into Parabolica. The 50 is about where you're going to threshold brake, about 80%. Keeping the car to the left here and trying to maximize the amount of speed that you can carry through here. So try to think of a good clean transition from braking back to throttle. There's going to be a fair amount of trail braking, and you'll see me kind of tapping and actually kind of modulating a little bit of brake and a little bit of throttle, trying to feel the balance of the car and the point where I can get back to the throttle as soon as possible, which is right at about the mid-corner point. You want to be getting back to, or just slightly before that. So getting back to throttle here. And as you're coming around Parabolica, you want to be back to full throttle to the point where you're obviously not going to run too wide on the exit. And so just as soon as you feel like you can reach full throttle there, that's definitely what you want to do. Very important to hit all of the last set of corners real well. I think Ascari, the last chicane, and now Parabolica are probably two of the most important points to hit well, as these are your best passing zones on the track. The initial setup that I've done for the car is actually just a 7-wing setup, which is what I felt I could get a good balance between speed and consistency. I'll probably experiment further with less downforce. I did a little bit with less, but I felt like I was just sacrificing too much through here Parabolica, and also through the Lesmo curve, and just to find the right amount of speed where I could run consistent laps and also run good lap times is what I ended up with the amount of downforce that I'm using here. This is just the first version of my setup. As always, I try to provide additional setups in the forum if I can find improvements that I think would be beneficial. So again, coming through this corner, getting back to full throttle, and now at this point it's going to be full throttle all the way to the rest of the corner, through the rest of the lap. So let's go ahead and play that through. All right, so there's a lap of Monza Grand Prix. Hope it's helpful. Talk to you later.